Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Masri. Thanks for joining me. I interviewed Victoria Cluney, who has 18 years of experience in real estate investing. She now ventures into a waterfront motel in Nova Scotia. She's an experienced leader, having served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 21 years. She's also very active in the real estate community. And on this episode, we discuss growing up in a military family, the start of her real estate portfolio, and why she had to rent her first home, why she invests in Nova Scotia, and then her exciting new motel project. I hope you'll enjoy the episode. Make sure to share this with a friend or family member. I know you guys know some people that can benefit from the content. We are trying to inspire others to grow and to build a real estate portfolio and to create the life that they want. So obviously getting that message across by sharing it would be extremely helpful. And if you guys want to connect with me, go to welloff.ca. There are some opportunities there to book a call. I'm more than happy to chat with you. And finally, if you want some free reports, we have some pretty cool content that you can download by going to welloff.ca/report. So there you go. Enjoy the episode. I'm here with Victoria Cluney. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, George. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up? Name a few things that you remember. I always start off that way.
I love that question, actually. That never gets asked, at least to me. So kind of interesting, I suppose. I was born in North Bay, Ontario, to a military family. And so my childhood, they call us military brats. And we moved every couple of years. And we actually moved to Germany when I was 5 years old. So I spent 10 years living in Germany. And what was really good about that was because my mother, who was born in Hong Kong, but is British and Swedish, her whole entire family was in Europe. And so we really got to maximize our time there. We spent Christmases in France. We would go tobogganing in Switzerland. We would go to Italy to visit my aunt. So traveling to Spain, that's where we vacationed. So I really grew up quite cultured and having a European mother. And then we moved again to Canada. And I remember vividly because the Blue Jays had just won that year. So it was, I think, in 1993. And I had never heard of the Blue Jays, but for some reason, everybody cared so much about them. So I had a bit of a culture shock, but very, very grateful for that type of upbringing and gave me a new perspective.
So you pretty much, I guess you grew up in Europe until you were about, 15 years old, roughly? Is that when you moved to Canada?
About 10 years old.
You don't even have a slight accent at all. It's awesome. I guess because your parents spoke perfect English, right?
That's right. And my mother has a British accent, which is quite strong. And so I do get confused. People, they question where I'm from quite a bit because I think I must have a little bit of something. It is a bit of a mixture. I also spent the past 20 years almost living in the East Coast. So that also brings an element of an accent. So I think it's confusion. That's what my accent is often, is just pure confusion.
Sure. So, all right. So you grew up in a military family. What's that like? I've always wondered because I read David Goggins' book.
Yes.
I'm sure you're familiar with him, right? Being
Very.
in the military.
Yes.
So I was really curious, the things he has to go through to become a Marine and whatnot. What was or a Navy SEAL? Sorry, not Marine, Navy SEAL. What was your experience in the military like?
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel like I've been in it my whole life because, of course, with my father being in the military, those values were instilled in us very early. That lifestyle was instilled. And so for me, though it was very difficult to be moving every couple of years, I look back at my childhood and I don't really have that one best friend or that one group that I grew up with. Alternatively, I was able to create fast friends. I was able to adapt to new surroundings very quickly. So that's given me a huge benefit as an adult, even especially just moving here to Ottawa in the past year and a half. I've been able to immerse myself in the community quite quickly because it's what I've been doing my entire life. But When I joined the military, when I was 18, so basically I went from living at home, joining the military, and adopting that lifestyle. Big shock for me. Being 18 years old, I was tiny. I didn't really, I didn't identify as a military type person. I was your typical, high school girl. For whatever reason, I joined. I was sort of tricked into it. I always kind of say I didn't know what I was getting into, but then I was there. And this was back in 2001. So the culture was very different in the military. And of course, I had to join the infantry, which was, arguably one of the toughest fields to immerse yourself in. So we're going into the field, we're, learning how to shoot guns and carrying heavy rucksacks. And I became very, very resilient from that experience, which has, again, benefited me immensely as a full adult now.
Cool. Was it really tough, the training that they put you through, just qualifying to enter the Army? Because I know the stories that David Goggins shares, like Hell Week and all that stuff that he had to go through, which very few people end up completing. What was your experience like?
Yeah. So, I mean, like David Goggins, he joined the special forces, like an elite program in the American. So that's just next level stuff. But certainly for an 18-year-old female in 2001, basic training was a wake up call. And so the whole intent of basic training really is to try to see if somebody can acclimate into that military culture and the organization. And so, yeah, it was terrifying, to be honest. Like, you didn't have any control whatsoever. You were told like when to eat, when to sleep. You were woken up abruptly. You didn't know, like you would go for a run and you didn't know how long that run was going to be. So it was a big shift in the comforts of being at home and being a teenager. And I had to grow up incredibly fast. I remember thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? I'm laying in a ditch and I've got like a rifle and I'm, waiting for people. And then of course 9/11 happened, which was only a couple of months after I joined. So that was a big wake up call as well. And it really like shook me from my comfort zone and it toughened me up. And, now looking back today, I've got 21 years in, and the things that I've done and overcome and pushed through, I feel like I can do anything now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Were you ever sent abroad to work out there?
So I did not. When Afghanistan happened, then actually there was quite a few people that were going. And I remember I used to be full of piss and vinegar. Like, I was just really hungry to do big things. And I would put in memos to get posted to go overseas or to go on deployments. And that it just didn't happen for me. And then I had a child, and I was about 8 years into it. And all of a sudden, like, my whole priorities shifted in the military. And I was very fortunate I could transfer occupation. So I transferred into an occupation where we really only have like one deployment opportunity out of the whole occupation. And so it's still something that I have, like, once my son's a little bit older, that I'm still considering to go for. But I was posted to Virginia, so I got to go and work for NATO. And part of that job was to actually go to different countries. So I was in Bulgaria, I went to Italy, Greece, France to set up these conferences for NATO. And that was a pretty cool experience for me.
Cool. So with all that, how does real estate tie into your life and what you're doing today?
It kind of went hand in hand for me. And the way I always explain it, it's like I started unintentionally investing. And when I joined the military when I was 18, and then I was posted to Ontario, I decided to buy a house, and it was new build. And so I was choosing all of the designs just from like what they offered me. And then about a year and a half afterwards, I decided to sell it. So I got made profit on that, built another house, took it like extra level because I was given now allowances. And if you remember, like I'm 22 at this point, so I'm designing kitchens and I'm thinking about like where outlets are going in every single room. And at the time, cable, everybody thought about like where cable was going in the bedroom. So I got very interested in real estate starting from there. And then I purchased my third home and then I got posted. And so this is where like I really became a landlord instead of moving on, and I was making money on these new builds. And to become a landlord was like not something I wanted to do, but at the time, this was 2005, the market was almost similar to what it's today, where it was more difficult to sell. So it wasn't really an option. Otherwise, I would have lost a lot of money. So I found tenants, and then I moved to the US, and I just had my friends watch the property for me, and I just communicated through email with my tenants and figured it out. When I got posted back from the US, I didn't have the heart to ask the tenants to move out because they had a young family. So that's when I bought a condo. So then I started duplicating. And then fast forward 10 years later, I was almost resentful of becoming a landlord. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. I didn't feel qualified to do that job. I had grown men calling me up, if there was a plumbing issue or anything, and I would come to the house and have no idea what I'm doing, but figured it out. You just kind of muddle through step by step. And by that time, I'd had a couple of tenant turnovers. And I decided to sell the property after 10 years because I didn't want to do that landlording thing anymore. I didn't want the phone calls. And when I sold that property and I saw the money that I had earned really for very little work at the end of the day, that's when I made the decision to become intentional and took that money and put it right back in. And I bought duplexes, single family homes. I bought cottages on a lake and really just started to build my portfolio. Majority of it is in Nova Scotia. And then I just purchased now a single family home here in Ottawa that I actually plan on demolishing, severing the lot, and then developing the land.
Cool. Nova Scotia, why did you buy there? Because I also noticed, I thought I read somewhere that you also invest in New Brunswick. Is that right? Or you have?
No, I have looked in New Brunswick, and I was interested in New Brunswick, and that was last year. But then when they went and changed the rent cap policy, I
Yeah.
just decided to stick to where I knew best because Nova Scotia did the same thing. And so while I understand why the government's putting that in place, I think that it causes a lot of stress on landlords with all the expenses that are going up, and it just takes a lot of the control out of our hands. So I was seeking other opportunities to gain that control back again. And I invested in Nova Scotia because that's where I was living at the time. And when I moved to Ottawa, it was in the heart of COVID. Everything was virtual anyways. We bought our primary residence virtually, never saw it. And I thought that I would transition to Ottawa market much quicker. But because my whole team is in Nova Scotia, they just continued to send me deals that would come up, off market and on market deals. I had built a good team and lots of connections, and it almost became too easy to invest because literally I didn't even have to leave my home. They were doing walkthroughs for me, FaceTime. I had developed really good trust with a lot of my team members. And so they would tell me like if things were not lining up or didn't look good or if I had to investigate things more. So I just started buying all virtually.
Cool. So you were doing all this. You were growing your portfolio while you were working full time, I guess, or while you were with the army.
Yes. So, and I'm still with the military, but I was accepted. The reason I even came to Ottawa is because I got accepted to a school program. So I'm going to Carleton full time to achieve my master's in psychology. And what this did was allow me the freedom of flexibility because now I don't need to show up 9 to 5 somewhere. I have classes and courses, and a lot of homework and a lot of writing and research that I have to do, but I can now manage my time. And so I wake up, I'm notorious for waking up at 5 a.m., and I work weekends, I work evenings, I work pretty much around the clock. And the flexibility has afforded me a lot more opportunities to really sink into investing more than I had before.
Sure. What were you looking to accomplish through your investing? Were you like you were buying these properties in Nova Scotia? Were you just buying aimlessly, or did you have a target in mind?
I'm loving your questions, by the way, because it's there's a rhyme and reason for why I was doing it, but not necessarily have been asked this before. But so when I was buying in Nova Scotia, I don't have a reason. I didn't have a community or a network. I didn't know anybody that was doing what I was doing. I just know that I was driven to buy real estate, and I was really good at monetizing it. And I did a couple of different projects where, like we did renovations, we did the buy and holds, we did the new constructions, and then I moved into short-term rentals and was having a good time with it. When we moved to Ottawa, I started to really level things up because of lifestyle. Because in Nova Scotia, the home that I owned was like a third of the price of what I have today, but probably 3 times bigger. And the quality of life in Nova Scotia that we had with our salaries, our military salaries, and then with our investment portfolio, which was good for cash flow, we had a great life. So we were quite comfortable. And it became a blessing in disguise because I was opposed to coming to Ottawa. I pushed back pretty hard. I wanted to stay in Nova Scotia. It's what I knew, and I was comfortable. When we came here, and it was in the height of the market, and so really we had no choice but to overspend on our house. And it was an emotional buy because this is where we're going to, finish raising our son. This is it for us. Like, I'm not moving anymore. I'm going to be retiring, in a number of years. And so we're really hunkering down. We wanted a place that we were going to enjoy, but it was so expensive. And I was really driven towards maintaining a quality of life that I was used to. And I went ham.
Well, it's funny you say that it's really expensive because Ottawa is like substantially cheaper than Toronto from what I remember, unless things have really changed. But
It's all
yeah,
perspective.
yeah, exactly. Um, so I guess the answer to my question was kind of that you were just aimlessly buying, just following a gut instinct that said, "Hey, this seems right. This is working. I'm good at this. Let's just keep buying and growing." Since that point, have you decided, like, have you thought about what your goals were, or is that still something that you're working on?
Certainly not aimless anymore. I I adopted the identity of an entrepreneur that I never considered myself before. I don't even know if I would have called myself an investor before. I knew that I invested in real estate, but because I wasn't in this world and surrounded by other people that were doing this, I just thought that I bought properties. That was how I identified. When I put that hat on, and I was like, no, you know what? I'm actually going to treat this like a business. That's when everything shifted for me and my approach shifted. And so I don't have a number per se, or like, amount of doors that I want, but I have a lifestyle that I am just so hungry for and so excited for. And I think that I'll never stop. And so I don't even like give myself a ceiling. I just know that I'm going to keep going because I love it. Like, I truly do love it. And if I didn't have to do it, I still would do it.
So that's interesting you say that, because earlier you were saying you didn't feel like you um, that you were a landlord. You didn't like having the grown men calling you about plumbing issues um, and all that. So was there any point where that shifted, or is that still something that is that still kind of how you feel? Because you said you love it at this point.
I do. So I love aspects of it. And I love that real estate can be a vehicle for me for, other things in my life that excite me. Managing tenants does not excite me for sure. And but there's a book, Who Not How. So that book is really about maximizing what you are good at and then using other people or like paying for other people to do the things that you don't necessarily want to do. So at the time, I never considered hiring a property manager. I was too cheap for that. Like everything I thought about was such limiting, right? It was just like, how can I save money? Now, property managers. That's all that I use property managers. Even last year, I was feeling a big disconnect between tenants and landlords and with the government and all the policies that are being put in place and the challenges that, landlords are having to even just to sustain their investments. I decided to pivot a little bit. And so we bought a motel last year, like right in around November. So this is a new venture. It's a business. I actually purchased the business and we're in full renovations right now, but we're due to open in May. And so this is a really exciting project because it's actually taking me out of being just a landlord and owning multifamily properties to running like a business, a motel. We're making it boutique, like it's on the water in Nova Scotia. And so that's really exciting to me because I can start to control the capital again, the revenue. What I put forward, the value I put out is the value I get back in. So I'm creating that lifestyle, and I say it through real estate, and because real estate is a part of it, but it's not necessarily going to be just being a landlord.
Sure, for sure. Um, have you seen that show on Netflix about the two girls that
Yes, it's exactly
that do
like
the
it's
yeah
eerily the same, and even we even look like them. If you see us right beside each other, my business partner, her name is Noelle. She looks
yeah
like the taller, dark-haired girl.
yeah yeah
It's eerie. It's eerie. I know. We
yeah?
should
It's
reach out to them.
just in case anyone's listening. I forget what this show was called. It was something about motel makeover or
Motel
something like
makeover.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, on Netflix. That was pretty cool. Did watch that. It's a pretty unique strategy. Like I haven't seen too many people that invest in motels. Um, so that's really cool. What are you hoping to get out of it? Like some additional cash flow, or is this more for your, I guess, your net worth that you're doing all this with the?
Yeah, the cash flow is crazy. It's and I have run these numbers like sideways, backwards, everything that I can think of to mitigate the risk with this motel, and the numbers are really really strong. The location is incredible for this motel. We started to push it out on social media, and the response has just been phenomenal. And yeah, so what I'm hoping to get, obviously, cash flow growth that will come from this, excitement in investing again, and not just. I believe in boring investments, and that's why like I have a diverse portfolio. I've got properties that I've had for a long time that are just like chugging along, and I love those
Mhm.
properties too. But this motel has just added color to my investing. I have a meeting
Yeah,
every week with my partner, and we talk about what we need to get done and the ideas that we have that we just like flow back and forth. I've learned a lot about marketing. I've learned about how to buy a business, share sales. Um, so it's a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun. And we've been able to
yeah,
apply a lot of our skill set in the areas that we're responsible for. And it's just become like a really great partnership.
cool. Are you able to share some of the numbers out of curiosity, or is that not something you can share?
No, I mean, I can definitely share. So we bought the motel for 835,000. It's It was an existing building and business. So it was already an operating motel owned by like a mom and pop, right? So on the waterfront. So it's directly on the waterfront, 5 minutes from Wolfville, Nova Scotia, which is a very popular tourist area. You've got the university there. And this motel came with two vacant lots right beside it, also on the water. And so renovation, go ahead. The
And what you're sharing.
sure, sure. So the renovation costs were approximately 150,000, and it was in good shape. Like the bones of it were good. The worst part about it, as we started to take some walls down, was the bathroom. There was condensation built up, so we had to renovate the bathrooms, which took more than what we expected. But we had a buffer anyways. And then our after repair value for this motel is between 1.9 and 2.3 million.
Awesome. Very cool. How is it only 150? Well, first of all, how many rooms do you have in this
Nine.
motel?
So it's nine. So it's
Nine.
not an overly large motel.
Right. So you spent what, like maybe 15,000 roughly per unit?
Approximately. That's
Per
right.
per room, sorry.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So you spruced it up. You maybe just made it look nice, painted it, updated a few things.
Yeah, exactly. So like paint everything, the bathrooms, and then updated. So the bed, we kept the bed frames there. Half the mattresses were good to go. Then we updated the lighting. The flooring stayed the same. So yeah, it was really just a cosmetic upgrade. And my business partner is a interior designer, so she's the boots on the ground. She lives in Nova Scotia. She does all short-term rental management. That she owns a property management company. So for us, it was like the perfect fit because she could manage all of the interior design. We're trying to keep this as economical as possible because for us, because this is our first time creating this motel, we don't want to go in too much. We don't want to over leverage with this motel. And it gives us room for growth over the next couple of years. So when we do want to do maybe new flooring, then we can. But it has this like rustic vibe to it. But we're going to bring in all of the more modern, uh, like nice designs, white and bright.
Cool. That's pretty cool. So either it sounds like either you got it for a steal, or you're substantially increasing the income that it's generating.
It's going to
Which
be a
one of
bit of
those?
both. It's honestly a
Yeah.
combination of both, which is the ideal. And so for this motel, we saw it as a pocket listing first. And my partner was the one who got word about it. So she called me up right away, and I said, "Yeah, absolutely, let's go." So again, FaceTime video for me. She was there. We saw it right away. We're like, "Absolutely, 100%." We put an offer in. By the time we put an offer in, other people had seen it. We went competing. In my mind, I had a baseline. So they were asking $799, and of course they were trying to get, that was the whole intent, was to try to bring in multiple offers. So for me, my baseline at the time was 825 because I hadn't had the appraisal yet. So I was just, going off of the numbers and just real like preliminary. Didn't have a lot of comparables to go with, so I just stuck it at 825. We were not the highest offer, and they tried to get us to go up because they knew who we were. My partner's well known in that community as well and respected for what she does. And same with me. I came from that community, so I had developed a reputation. And so they knew that we could handle this motel and close, but we were not the highest. And I stuck. So I was doing the negotiating and I stuck to my guns. And they took the other offer. And then I asked them, can we be the backup? And I also asked them, what's the deadline for conditions? And they said 3 weeks. And as soon as I heard 3 weeks, I knew we had it in the bag.
Oh yeah.
I knew
That's
it.
a very
I
short
knew it.
time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So obviously overzealous buyers came in, they, promised the world, and they tried to, it's such a good lesson for investors to understand that, have your standards, have those boundaries, know like where that is. I probably should have been able to go higher knowing what I know
Mhm.
now, but at the time I was operating on the information that I had. So what I did was they allowed us to do backup offer. They were quite happy to have that in place. And the minute that we got the backup offer, I called my team. I called the appraiser. I called the inspector. I called my financer. And I had everybody lined up. Uh, 2 days after the the condition deadline of the first buyers was due. And I told the seller that we were ready to go. And I put it in the backup offer condition that like ours expired the day after the condition deadline, because I obviously wanted to put pressure on the seller not to extend the current buyer's condition.
So you're saying you put an extremely short condition in for your purchase?
I said that our backup offer was going to expire the day after the condition
Oh,
deadline.
okay. Your
So
irrevocable date.
that's
Yeah.
right. So we weren't willing to hang out waiting for
Sure.
extensions.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, generally, like I know with apartment buildings, you're looking for like 60 to 90 days as a conditional period. So 3 weeks. I mean, I don't know what it's like for motels because I've never been involved, but I feel like that's way too short to be able to do your due diligence, right?
100%. Plus, it was a share sale. So, like, you're buying the business. And what happens with that is you do your due diligence on the asset itself, like you would a regular building or commercial property. But then the business needs the due diligence on top of that. So, you need now a share sale agreement, which is pricey and lengthy for the lawyers to create. And then you need to do a legal due diligence to make sure that there's no red flags from like any past inclination that there might be a lawsuit, because once I take over that business, now I'm responsible for it. And same with the financial side, to make sure that they stayed up to date on their taxes, that they don't owe like any suppliers money. So it's a long process. And I didn't understand share sales as much at the time, but I still knew enough that it
Yeah.
was not going to be 3 weeks.
Oh, for sure. How did you meet your partner?
I owned cottages on the lake and I managed them myself through Airbnb and for the first year, and it nearly like killed me. It became bigger than I expected, much more popular than I expected. So I actually hired her. So she was my property manager. And
Hmm.
then I sold them, but we still just kind of maintained a relationship. And I host masterminds and webinars. And I actually did like this East Coast kitchen party, online kitchen party for investors. And I brought her in as a speaker. And I do mentorship and coaching for people. And so she became one of my students. And she always manages, but she never buys. And so she,
Right.
she kind of went through the program and learned just different techniques to find off market properties. And yeah, that's how it happened.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have, I guess, is a partnership something that's regular, something that you regularly do with your investments, or was this kind of the first time you got involved with a partner?
It wasn't my first time. And, this is also something that I'm going through discovery with, because for the first, again, like 16, 17 years, I never partnered with anybody outside of my husband. But then I got introduced to partnerships and, started to navigate that. And so I have a number of partnerships, and they are all people that I know, that we're friends, that, we're like two people that bring different skill set to the table, and being able to create that. And they're good. And like, I have these great relationships and I love these properties. There's a different element that I have to be conscious of, just thinking about like with my own personality, because yes, while it opens up more doors and you can do more with it, you also have to think about compromises that come with partnerships. And I get to this stage of my life and my career where, I've compromised so much with the military and being restricted and always being like told where to go, what to do, that I have this like real desire for like full freedom to
Hmm.
be able to like sell what I want to sell, buy what I want to buy. And so I'm in this navigation period to decide whether or not I want to expand in that area, because developing a network, you get a ton of offers, you get lots of opportunities to create these, good relationships that can turn into partnerships. But yeah, I'm in that phase right now. So whenever somebody asks me or they're struggling with it, I can always talk about it candidly, because I'm going through it myself.
Sure. Sure. Have you been able to inspire other people in the military to follow in your footsteps?
Funnily enough, yes, quite a bit, because I do have a coaching program that I have quite a few military people in it. And I was just talking to somebody the other day, and the military, when you say something or when you give direction for something, you can just see like the difference with those type of people because of the environment that they've been brought up in. So the military ones are always just like taking the notes and they're off to go do whatever it is that you're recommending that they do. There's just like this oomph behind them. Not saying that other people don't have it. It's just you can really, there is a distinction.
I guess if you're in the military, you're trained to take action, right? To follow orders and take action. If
Exactly.
you're if you're slacking, if you're not doing what you're told, then that could mean you lose your life or somebody else loses their life or whatever else. So
Exactly.
you've got to move forward and just do what you're told.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
find that it gives me a really big edge in the real estate world because, you can problem solve, you can adapt, you can pivot, you are okay with taking risks and pushing through that discomfort and the resiliency that comes from it. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I draw from all of that in what I'm doing today.
Very cool. Last question for you: how did you get involved with the Right Club?
How did I get involved with the right club? Oh, so I was on a podcast. I was asked to be on Francois Lanthier's
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
Wine and what's it called?
Wine in real estate.
Is it Wine and Real Estate? Okay, sorry,
I think
Francois.
so. Yeah.
So Francois' podcast, and then I guess the Right Club had a pop up in Ottawa that night, and so Francois was like, "You should come." So I said, okay, great. Just another event to be a part of. And I went, and sitting across from me was Laurel Simmons, who's one of the co-founders of the Right Club. And Laurel and I, we hit it off. We like spoke for a good hour. After that, we stayed connected. And then I think they asked me to speak at an event. Yeah, I got asked to speak at an event. I got asked to speak at the next event. I got asked to speak on their podcast. And yeah, it just kind of blossomed from there. And I remember being in Niagara Falls for something else. And they had always offered, like, if you're ever in Niagara Falls. And so I went over for a glass of wine and just like, spent the night talking. And I just have so much time for Laura. I think she's awesome. And
Hmm.
it just kind of blossomed from there.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. Um, do you feel like there's anything we didn't touch on that's important? Anything you want to share?
Ooh, I think like the only other thing I want to share about is when you're looking at real estate, I think it is more important to consider real estate on the relationships that you're building. And, even I kind of say the psychology behind real estate investing, because not only for yourself, understanding human behavior and why you do the things that you do, that can help you either like tone back something or push through something, right? Because a lot of times that fear will stop us from doing something, but we have to understand, well, why do we feel that fear? What is the fear? Is it really valid? Because we are primitive minds living in like a modern world, if that makes any sense. So our bodies respond to the way that things used to be and not necessarily how they are today. And so if you understand a little bit about that, then you can really recognize what's holding you back, and you can say to yourself, okay, I recognize it, but it's not going to impact me. Like, I choose my own decisions. And then the other part is when you understand other people, then especially when it comes to negotiating, you can apply that so that you're taking the emotion out of it, and you'll be so much more successful if you can just completely remove emotion and then just think about where's that middle ground, and think about it from the seller's perspective. What are the seller's fears? What are the seller's objections? And if you can answer all of those things, then you can get that, leg up over the other people. And that's what I found has just been so helpful for me is to be able to make these connections. And I do that with sellers. And even if we can't come to terms with something, I never leave it bad because I might circle back. And it's been, it's been a really good strategy to apply with investing.
I agree with you 100%. I always try to do that. Sometimes it's not in your control because I'm a realtor, so sometimes I don't get to speak to the seller directly. I have to go through the other agent.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do have an opportunity to speak to the seller directly, I always try to connect, like you said, and really try to help them as well as just create a win-win situation. And like you said, if things don't work out, there is no need to get angry or frustrated. It's just the way it is, and try to stay on good terms.
Totally. That like emotional regulation is just so important, and it's often easy to forget about it. I forget about it too, and I'm trained on it, right? So I can't imagine, but it's accessible for people to figure out how to regulate themselves and their emotions, but you just have to seek it, and not a lot of people do.
Well, I appreciate everything you've shared. Do you want to just maybe tell people what services you offer and how they can reach you?
I mean, I just like, I'll talk to anybody, to be honest. They can reach me on pretty much all the platforms: Facebook, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok and enjoying that platform. I'm pushing the motel more on TikTok than anything, and it's been a lot of fun. But if anybody wants to reach out, if anybody needs help or support, I do free discovery calls every Wednesday for people. And if you're looking for more support than that, then let's have a conversation and see if it's the right fit.
Very cool. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. And I wish you all the best with your motel, with your investments, and hopefully I'll have a chance to meet you in person soon.
I know. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Your support is truly appreciated. And if you can share this with a friend or family member that might benefit from the information, remember, our goal is to motivate and inspire others to take action and to build wealth and to become well off. Enjoy the rest of your day.